It's on. Are we ready? Woo. It's on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Congressman Burgess's Town Hall meeting. My name is Mary Horn. I have the privilege of serving as Denton County Judge, and I want to welcome you this evening. First, I want to remind everyone, please turn off cell phones, pagers, any electronic device that might be disruptive. Thank you very much. Come on in, folks. Welcome. We're glad to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd please rise and remove your hats as we honor our country with a presentation of colors. Commanding the color guard this evening and carrying the American flag is Cadet Technical Sergeant, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this name, Lesria Wilson. Carrying the Texas flag is Cadet Major Haley Hunter. Serving as guards are Cadet Staff Sergeant John Butts and Cadet Airman Emmon Givens. And they are in place. So if you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I have the pleasure of introducing our congressman. After spending nearly 3 decades practicing medicine in North Texas, Congressman Michael Burgess was first elected to Congress in 2002 and was re-elected most recently in November 2016. Dr. Burgess currently represents the majority of Denton County and parts of Tarrant County. As of the 115th Congress, Dr. Burgess is the most senior medical doctor on both sides of the aisle, serving in the U.S. House of Representatives. He serves on the prestigious House of Energy and Commerce Committee, where he is chairman of the Subcommittee on Health. He also serves as a member of the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations and the Subcommittee on Digital Commerce and Consumer Protection. In addition, he is a member of the House Rules Committee and the Helsinki Commission. In 2009, Dr. Burgess founded and currently serves as co-chair of the Congressional Health Caucus. Please help me welcome Congressman Dr. Michael Burgess.
Thank you, Judge.
We'll protect you.
I thank you, and thanks so much. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us this evening. Let me offer my sincere appreciation to the Denton Independent School District for making the facility available to us this evening. Braswell High School staff, Dr. Leslie Guajardo, who I saw, there you are. Thank you for opening the door to us this evening. Deanne Roberson, the school secretary, for all of your hospitality and your assistance to our office. I want to thank the Air Force Junior ROTC for their presentation of colors and leading the pledge. And Judge Horn, as always, thank you for your kind introduction. And let's just take a moment and thank the Little Elm Police Department. The family's been through kind of a tough time. We want them to know that we support them, and I'm certainly grateful for their participation this evening. Little Elm. So no formal remarks tonight. This is your night. I want to hear what's on your mind. This is your chance for us to have this interaction. I'm just going to ask you, let's try as much as we can to keep it civil. I will stress this is not a political event. This is a representational event for me, so I'm not here on behalf of any particular political persuasion. I will do so if you provoke me, but on the basis it is going to be a non-political event. So Eric, where are you going to start the microphone? Now we're scheduled till 8:30, and this evening I'm going to ask that we hold to that 8:30 time because the folks at Braswell who are kind enough to let us be here this evening, they got a school opening going on in just a few days or weeks, and they need to get ready for that. So we are, I'm going to apologize in advance to anyone who doesn't get their question delivered by 8:30. There will be an opportunity for you to write things down. And as luck would have it, you'll have another opportunity on Saturday morning if you care to join us down in the colony, if you don't get a chance to be heard tonight. But for this event this evening, I am going to ask that we respect the custodial staff at Braswell High School, and we will stop pretty much on time at 8:30. So Eric has got a microphone set up there. I do want to stress that this is a public meeting. Everything that I say is on the record. Everything that you say is on the record. Do be judicious. Your YouTube video can beat you home, and everything is forever now in the days of the internet. So with that, I'm very good, Eric.
Good evening.
Good
Thank
evening.
you for coming and having a town hall. We appreciate
Sure.
it. On October 28th, 2016.
This is the 100th town hall that I've done, just for a reference point for people who say I don't do enough town halls.
Your counterpart, Kenny Marchant, should take some lessons from you, because I don't think he's had any. But that's why we appreciate you doing this. On October 28th, 2016, you stated, and it's on your website, that I joined Speaker Ryan in calling for the Director of National Intelligence to suspend all classified briefings for Secretary Clinton until the investigation is fully and properly conducted. On July 8th, the New York Times broke the story that Donald Jr. and Jared Kushner met with Russians with ties to the Kremlin to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. First, would you meet with a foreign adversary to get dirt on your opponents? And second, why haven't you asked for Jared's security clearance to be revoked? Also, if the grand jury finds that either Trump or his team colluded, will you call for impeachment? What is your red line before you start putting your country and our Constitution before the party? And if Mueller is fired, will you finally stand up for what is right and denounce Trump and follow your Senate counterparts and have him reinstated?
So you've asked a lot of stuff there. On the issue of Jared Kushner's security clearance, clearly the House Intelligence Committee is, they are doing their own investigation. The Senate Intelligence Committee is doing their investigation. I expect we will hear the results of what they determine. On the, what was next on your list? That was a long list.
Sorry. Would you meet with a foreign adversary to get dirt on one of your opponents?
What are you offering?
I don't think I'm a foreign adversary. But is that appropriate, in your opinion, to meet with Russia to get dirt from the Russian government?
Look, for me personally, no, I would not meet with a foreign adversary.
Okay. Thank you. And what is your red line?
But I will say this, I did not come to service from a long background in politics, and many of the members of the Trump family are in the same situation. I don't know if someone had posed that question to me in October of 2002, if I would have provided the same answer. I just honestly don't know, because that's not the type of thing that most people think about on a daily basis. And when you're in a campaign, you are in it to win it. And that is...
So what is your bridge too far with Trump?
What is what?
What is your bridge too far, your red line? If he fires Mueller, do you stand here today and pledge that you will have Mueller reinstated?
It's such a hypothetical question.
It's not. It's being floated around.
No, it's entirely hypothetical, and I don't, again, you deal with the circumstances as they come up. That's not a question that is answerable at this point.
Okay, so that means probably nothing.
Well, any person can be fired for cause. I mean, that's within the administration. So, I mean, you're asking me to project regardless of the cause, and I don't know what the cause might be. It is a hypothetical situation. We are not going down that road.
So you're okay with collusion and Russia interfering with our elections?
Okay, look,
Thank
I
you.
will say this.
That.
You have had a full year to produce something, and it hasn't happened.
So the email that stated we have dirt on Hillary Clinton from people with ties to Russia is not enough for you? So the email that Donald Trump had to produce because the New York Times had a copy of it was not enough for you? That actually said we have dirt, we want to meet because we have dirt on Hillary Clinton? And that evening Trump made a speech saying there's something big to come out? That's not enough? I mean, it may seem circumstantial.
Hillary lost because she was a bad candidate. End of story.
And Trump won. And Trump won because Russia interfered with our elections.
No.
And Republicans like you are sitting down and being complacent and allowing an illegitimate president to sit in the White House threatening to fire everybody who comes close enough in that investigation. You are putting your party over our country.
We are going
you are
to
putting your party over your country.
We are going to end up disagreeing.
You are putting your party over your country.
Look, I ran for office because I believe in this country. I gave up a 25-year medical career.
Then prove it. Stand up to Trump.
Now, did you bring your, last time you spoke, I couldn't understand you because I needed a translation device.
We'll try it again. Dobro večer.
Yeah, I don't understand you.
Means good evening.
No, try a different language.
Okay. Well, I thought we ought to all get used to it. Thank you for staging this town hall so as constituents we can share with you our concerns with a variety of issues now facing our nation, which pose a threat to who we are as a country. As you are surely aware, over the last several months, it has become evident that the administration has deep connections to one of our nation's greatest enemies, Russia, or as my friends in Russia would say, Soviet Russia. We've been provided clear evidence that Russians meddled with our election process, possibly one of the greatest infringements in our sovereignty as a nation. We now have clear and irrefutable evidence that numerous members of the administration, including the POTUS, have either held private communications with leaders of the Russian government or have cozied up to key leaders of the Russian government since well before the new administration took office. We know that servers at Trump Tower were connected with the servers at one of the most notorious financial institutions in Russia, Alpha Bank. Excuse me. We were told this would be a nonpartisan, non-political, so just let me finish.
No, I said I would not be.
Okay.
I can't.
Well, I'm trying
I can't
to
speak
abide
for everyone
by your
here.
wishes. So, I'm setting a framework for 3 easy questions. So, we know that servers at Trump Tower were connected with servers at one of the most notorious financial institutions in Russia, Alpha Bank, whose leaders are among the most despised oligarchs in Russia and who are dear, loyal friends of Mr. Putin. And I speak that because I lived there for 3 years. I could go on, but needless to say, our administration has found itself in a position where it's under the influence of a government who's declared to its people that America is the great enemy and whose primary desire is to bring Western American democracy to its knees. So with that as a framework, here are 3 short questions that I'm sure only require 3 short answers. First, if the administration, whether it's the president himself or one of his puppets, fires Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller, will you stand with the American public and call for a completely independent investigation of the depth of this administration's treacherous behavior, while also supporting the people's call to pursue impeachment, not just of the president, but of all of those in his administration who partook in this treachery? That was the first question, so I'll go one at a time to make it less complex. So my question is, would you support if Mr. Mueller is let go, however it may occur?
Again, we just discussed this with the previous questioner. You're asking a hypothetical question, which honestly I cannot answer. Mr. Mueller has a good reputation within the Justice Department and lawyers in Washington. I expect him to do a good and thorough job. I expect him to be nonpartisan in that charge, and we'll see that he comports to that. And then we'll see where it leads us. The whole purpose of doing the investigation, if you don't know the result, you don't do the investigation.
Agreed.
I will say this, it has been a year. It has been a year that this story has been out there. Maybe it's time people showed their cards.
I think there have been many other situations, both Republican side of the aisle and Democratic side of the aisle. Whenever you do an investigation, it takes time. It's not a hurried event. I think you too would like this to be thorough. Time is required. Second, furthermore, if the administration tries to undo the sanctions, which you happen to vote for, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now in place, for whatever reason, will you immediately call for action to be taken against the administration, including impeachment? In other words, if he decides to skirt the power of the Congress, which he is inclined to do, will you stand behind your original vote?
The President signed the law.
Doesn't mean he can't try to go around it.
The President signed the law.
If he tells
Be
the truth,
happy. Be happy. He signed the law.
I'm happy, but I don't trust him. And lastly, what we as Americans really want to know is, do you defend the sovereignty and freedoms of the U.S., or do you prefer to see an autocratic and tyrannical form of government akin to Soviet Russia?
Right, so we've had slavery, we had to, but throughout time, our country has realized that when we are you, because I do understand that through the Human Rights Campaign has given you a rating of 0, to show that you have not, in your history as our congressperson, stood on the right side of history and fighting for the rights of LGBTQ Americans. So my hope for you is that, like our country, you may discover that you've stood on the wrong side of history and still have time to leave a positive legacy. So my question for you is based on—
Hope springs eternal, right?
Exactly.
There you go.
That's why I'm here having this conversation with you. So my question for you is, based on the data, the definitive data that the Trevor Project has released last night, based on the fact that our history as a country shows that we want to do the right thing, my question for you is, what have you learned during your time as a congressperson in Washington about the challenges that your LGBTQ constituents have faced? And what will you do, like specifically, to stand on the right side of history and make sure that the Constitution protects them just as equally as it protects you or me?
So I think the two issues on transgenders in our schools, which of course—
pardon me, it's transgender people and not transgenders.
People
yes.
In our schools, which is of course the source of some debate down in Austin right now, and in the military, which was the source of some debate on the floor of the House. You wonder why, for President Obama, who said this was such an important issue for him, why he waited until his last 5 months in office to make those determinations. These were things that were within his power to do in his first years in office. He had a 60-vote majority in the Senate. Senate Republicans were unable to stop any of those activities. I don't disagree that the commander-in-chief, whether it be Barack Obama or Donald Trump, has the ability to make that determination for the United States military. It is a readiness issue, after all, that the commander-in-chief is required to make. I did disagree with the decision that President Obama made. I don't disagree with the decision President Trump has made, but it is in the hands of the generals, and they are going to make the readiness determination and deliver that information to the president, who in turn will share that with us.
So thank you for sharing your reflections. What specifically will you do, however, because the Constitution guarantees equality for all. There's nothing different about transgender people or gay people that should determine that we can make it legal then to discriminate against them. So what will you do?
What do you mean on the discrimination? Are you talking about service in the military?
I'm talking about...
Not everybody gets to serve in the military.
I understand.
There are some exclusionary conditions.
What I'm talking about is that there are no federal protections for people based on their sexual orientation or their gender identity. So as I said, though marriage equality is legal, a same-sex couple can get married and in so doing out themselves, then their landlord has evicted them from their apartment and they've lost their job. So, and that's perfectly legal in this country. My question for you is, what will you do as my congressperson to ensure that the rights of all LGBTQ Americans are protected? Not just the heterosexual cisgender Americans, but all Americans deserve equal protection. So what will you do? I don't care what Obama's done. I don't care what Donald Trump is doing. I'm here asking you, what will you do to protect Americans?
Everyone should follow the law. It's as simple as that.
Right. So everyone, but that's the thing. Everyone is following the law, and right now there's no law. So would you?
The law.
But there is no law to protect them. There are no laws to protect someone from being fired from their job or kicked out of their home based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Would you be in support of something like the Equality Act that would guarantee federal protections?
It's come up in the past, and I have not been supportive, and you know that.
That's too bad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kelly Barr. I live in Denton. This is the third time that I've been here to speak with you, and I also want to talk with you about a very local issue, very specific to your district. And I tried to talk with you about this at the Energy Summit that you had a few weeks ago in Denton. So we have what's called F-quality air. We have the worst smog problem in Texas, and we have one of the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. So this is not something that's just isolated to a few people here and there in your district, but is something that affects everyone in your district. We have been out of compliance with federal regulations about smog emissions for the entirety of the existence of those federal regulations, which is somewhere between 20, 25, 30 years.
And you are aware that those levels have been reduced over time. We would be in compliance with the levels as they were published in whatever I first took office in 2003. We are not in compliance with the new levels that were produced by the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Environmental Protection Agency is currently has under review even further reductions. Now, in all of that time, 2003, you could drive out here on 380 and not see a bus stop for miles. This area has grown incredibly in the past 20 years, past 25 years, certainly during the time that I've lived here. This was very rural. In spite of the fact of that growth, yes, we are a couple of points out of compliance. We would be in compliance with the previous standards, and the trend line is in the correct direction.
So, and I remember that, and I'm aware of all this information. I saw the same chart that you did, but as I told you after the energy conference, that chart only counted for nitrogen-based emissions, which is not actually in this district.
But it's also for particulates. Air quality in this area has continued to improve in spite of the growth in this area. Most of that is because of improvements in the technology for automotive engines, and of course that's one of the reasons that the automobile folks were so front and center at that Energy Efficiency Summit. Mobile sources are 60 to 68% of the pollution in this area. The way to get at that is to improve the quality and the efficiency of the automotive engine, or have people go to alternative methods of transport. I do have 2 horses, but they won't get me very far where I need to be on a daily basis.
Sure, and reducing automobile emissions won't get us very far when methane emissions from natural gas activity are one of the leading causes of poor air quality in our area. But I think you've jumped ahead a little bit of my question, which is really more about a pattern that I've noticed when it comes to issues that are very local to our district. For example, you voted against methane emission rules at the federal level, and that would have significantly cut down on the amount of flaring and venting of natural gas during natural gas operations. So even though we have a smog problem in this...
Well, on that Congressional Review Act, that actually dealt only with federal lands.
Yeah, and there is fracking on federal lands in our district. So another example is when you voted
no,
to...
the federal government's ownership, other than for the easement for the lakes, is, I mean, that is not the bulk of the energy production in the 26th district.
There's still fracking on federal lands here. So, but again, I mean, this is kind of beside the point, because I'm
well,
getting
when
to...
the Bureau of Land Management put in a request for an auction for those areas that were under their control, actually, many of the mayors in the area voiced concerns about that. My office worked with the Bureau of Land Management. They were unaware that those lands were actually covered by municipal authorities, and they backed off that sale. Problem solved, right?
So if I could get to my question,
sure.
I mean, it's really about something else. So another example is when you voted to allow internet service providers to sell our information. I brought this up at the second town hall. So basically they're allowed to sell our browser history and our sensitive information. And
that's
you voted for that bill.
Not true. That Congressional Review Act actually did not change anything in current law. It prohibited the FCC from going further, which is what they had intended to do, yes, under the Obama administration. People in the agencies were told, before the outcome of the election was known, put your pencils down and stop writing regulations. There's going to be someone new in office.
Which you couldn't have known, because the election hadn't happened yet.
Maybe Hillary Clinton would have wanted a different approach to the Federal Communications Commission. The point was, we were at the end of the Obama administration. The regulators were pushing out regulations hand over fist. It wasn't correct. The Congressional Review Act was there to stop that practice, and yeah, we used it. We used it a number of times.
To make sure that our privacy is not protected. That's the point that I'm getting to, because that...
Your privacy is as protected today as it was before. Those things had never gone into effect.
And the FCC decided that more protection was necessary. So again, I mean, it's this, what I'm building up to is a pattern that we have specific problems in our district. And it seems like you have voted recently to do things that would either make sure that those problems were not solved or would actually make them worse in terms of air quality. So what I'm wondering, this is my question, like, why do you vote for these things that go against the interests of the people who live in your district? And those are just 2 examples.
You know, I've lived here almost my entire life. One of the things that I've found when I have to make a decision and there's not time to go out and take a poll and ask people what they think, what I decide to do is supported by 60 to 80% of the district.
And so the rest of us just don't matter? Like, our privacy doesn't matter? The cleanliness of our air doesn't matter?
Look, that's a talking point. That wasn't reality. That wasn't reality. The FCC had not, those regulations were, there's nothing different about your privacy today than it was before those regulations were repealed.
And the reason for those regulations was that the current state of affairs was found to be insufficient. So, again, why do you vote against these things that go against...
That was a determination by the agency, not by the legislative branch. The agency took...
Are there any conditions under which do you think as someone who is in the federal government, are there any conditions that you think, where you think appropriate for the federal government to step in to protect things that are enshrined for us as rights in the Constitution, like privacy? Are there any circumstances under which you think that would be appropriate?
Oh, I think it happens every day.
Okay, so in this circumstance, when it was a question of protecting our constitutionally guaranteed right to privacy, why did you determine that it was not...
Which one of the Bill of Rights is that?
Our constitutionally guaranteed rights to privacy is enshrined in Supreme Court, in historical Supreme Court precedents.
Okay.
Which still counts as a constitutionally guaranteed right. Do you disagree that the Supreme Court is a legitimate branch of the federal government that is able to determine constitutionality?
The...
I mean, if you'd answered, I'd leave if you answered. I mean, do you think that these things don't go against our interests? Is that the problem?
You've asked a couple of questions. Do I think the Supreme Court exists? Yes.
I mean, you can treat that more as rhetorical, but really, like, do you think that these things, like privacy protections and improving the quality of our air, do you think these things go against our interests? Do you think that we don't deserve to have clean air and privacy?
I think there are times where federal agencies do things that in fact are detrimental to people in the district, and when I encounter that, I stand up to it. There were times when the NSA was doing things with privacy that I thought were inappropriate, and I stood up to it. And that has happened in the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and you know what? I bet it happens in the Trump administration.
Okay, well, I will be waiting to see you vote for things that actually help with the problems that we experience here.
Yes, sir.
Howdy, Dr. Braswell. Thank you for having this.
Thanks for coming.
This is my first town hall as well. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate seeing so many people out. My name is Samuel Escalante. I'm a resident of Denton, Texas. I'm a citizen and also a foreign-born immigrant. Today, I just want to ask you a simple question and get your thoughts. Do you support the president's endorsement of legislation that would limit the number of legal immigrants to our country by half over the next decade?
Well, that bill is introduced or going to be introduced by Senator Cotton and Senator Perdue, has not been introduced on the House side. I did see the press conference as you did yesterday. I haven't fully reviewed everything that was involved. Clearly I'm going to look at it, but right now I'm not prepared to give you an answer on that.
How do you feel generally about the impacts or the reasonings for the bill? The same things that you saw in that press briefing.
I do think there has been a problem with employment in this country. The chronically unemployed number has been people who are just taking themselves out of the workforce is way too high. And I do believe that we should have American jobs for American citizens. That should be our number one focus. And I do support the president in that.
I don't disagree with that notion at all. However, it's true that limiting the number of legal immigrants coming into our country will decrease certain things such as our tax base. How do you feel about decreasing our tax base? Currently, immigrants, the foreign-born, bring in almost $400 billion in taxes. How do you feel about decreasing that over the next decade?
Look, the tax base is always going to be the tax base. I don't know that we've had historic numbers of tax collections these past 2 quarters. I don't know that I know enough about the numbers that you're alluding to, but realistically, the tax base is much larger than what you're describing.
Definitely, I'm only speaking. Check. Definitely, I'm only speaking with regard to, again, the foreign-born who legally come here. Next point then, how do you feel about decreasing the spending power of Americans by taking out that group, half again, over the next decade? Foreign-born immigrants have just under $1 trillion in spending power. How do you feel about decreasing the amount of spending power that America as a whole has based on the spending power put in by immigrants?
Look, we're very, very fortunate to live in this country. People want to come here. That is a good thing. Still, the United States does have the sovereign right to define and defend its borders, and I do support the president in that. Well, he's asking about if people don't come here and spend money. Yeah, but that's a hypothetical that neither you or I can accurately address. People are going to come to this country because they want to be in this country, and that is not going to change. The difficulty that people are having, though, right now, our citizens in this country with finding employment and the type of employment that they need for their families, that has to be fixed first. And I am supportive of the president. I am grateful that illegal border crossings are down 70% under President Trump, General Kelly, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
For the audience, we're not discussing illegal immigration at all. We're literally discussing legal immigration. So again, next point, with regard to legal immigrants, with regard to specifically your main point about job creation, job growth, and getting people employed, 5.9 million people are employed by companies that are started by the foreign-born immigrants. In addition, I forgot the number off the top of my head, but statistically speaking, immigrants who start businesses are more likely to take risks for longer periods, and immigrants are typically, for especially lower skilled jobs and lower paying jobs, will stay in jobs much longer. So while I understand that there is an entire problem with illegal immigration, I'm not here to discuss that at all. There is, however, a very strong case, an economic case, job growth by legal immigrants. How do you feel about putting very strict and statistically harming, economically speaking, limits on those people who, like you said, want to come and will come, but this is 50% reduction over 10 years, which is huge.
I think I would want to see the demonstrable evidence of that harm. Like, people are still going to come to this country. It's a great place to do business.
So, great. My last question then, final question, is will you support the bill if it is demonstrable that this will have negative economic impacts for jobs?
I think there will be a number of economic studies that are done, and as I told you, that's one of the things in my due diligence in looking at the bill. You asked me if I was going to support it. I'm going to look.
But if there is negative
I'm going
consequences
to look
for the points that
it.
you are advocating,
I'm
which
going to
is
look
getting
at
people.
it from all facets, positive and negative.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Burgess, I was just going to give you a quick update. Right now, about the last 6 to 8 people at the pace that we're going are not going to be able to ask their question. So I just want to let everybody know, if you're thinking of asking a question, be prepared to go ahead and write it down, and we'll try and work through as quickly as we can on these next questions to work everybody through.
My mom always told me it was impolite to interrupt, so I'm letting people talk. Proceed.
Well, that's okay, because we'll interrupt. So, good evening, and thanks for being here, sir. So the reason that...
Stand closer to the microphone. Oh. They can't hear you. I can hear you fine, but they can't.
That's good. Well, I want you to hear me for sure. So this gentleman was talking about immigration, and that is not what I want to talk about, but I do want to talk about the children who are coming up and what life is like for the millennials and the people who cannot make a decent wage. And I want to know if you will support two things, and number one is a tax break for the middle class, which is rapidly disappearing, and an increase in the minimum wage so that young people coming on can support themselves. And so what we see across the country demonstrably is that children are unable to get on their feet because given the price of an apartment in your district, especially where I live in the Colony, the cost of living has gone up demonstrably, but the cost of what they're getting paid has not, and so then they try to work more than one job. They're getting burned out. And then the other part of that is I visited Tennessee, and in Tennessee, high school graduates are their college is paid for, their community college tuition is paid for. And one of the reasons that we are bringing in so many people from India and China and a lot of other countries is because we're not producing students that can move into science and math jobs because education has gone down the sewer. So what do you think you, as my congressman, and you have lived here all your life, I have lived here my entire adult life, what are you going to do to support the generation that's coming up and the one behind them that's in school right now? My grandson's in kindergarten, and when he starts first grade, I want him to get a decent education. And Texas is at the bottom in this country. And our country is at the bottom of developed countries.
So the first part of your question was about a middle-class tax cut, and I think the President addressed that the other day, and I am grateful that he did. And I think we will have an opportunity to talk about tax rates and tax reform in a big way in the next several weeks after Congress comes back to work in the 1st of September.
So
and my expectation is there will be some type of middle-class tax relief that is passed my hope is by Thanksgiving, and make it retroactive to the first of the year.
And can I have some assurance for my son who's here with Down syndrome and muscular dystrophy and multiple health problems that that money will not be ripped out of Medicaid, and it'll be money that comes from the people who can afford it?
First off, there was never going to be money ripped out of Medicaid, and under the health care proposals as discussed in the House, Medicaid was going to grow at 22% a year. So it wasn't exactly a cut. It was going to grow at a slower rate, at a rate that was
necessary
under a program that was actually put forward the first time by Bill Clinton, and Patty Murray was very supportive back in the 1990s of a per capita cap. But that's a separate issue. On the minimum wage, I will tell you, my read is the data on this is mixed. There are states, there are municipalities that have instituted their own minimum wage or living wage in their areas, and I'd say that's fine. That is something they should have the freedom to do. I'm not certain that the federal government really has that role to play across the country. And as a consequence, I mean, again, you look at some of the economic studies that are coming out of those places that vastly did bump up the minimum wage in those areas. I do think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I do think that it will really drive the production and the usage of robotics and kiosks in our fast food places, because it's a whole lot easier then to employ a robot than it is a person because of the wage issue.
So what are you going to do to support the people who are coming up, and what are you going to do to support the people who are in those jobs who are being replaced by robotics?
I think people do need entry-level jobs. You and I had entry-level jobs. They did not pay at the top of the wage scale, but we put our time in. You do your best work. You polish up the handle on the big brass door, as the song says, and you will succeed in this country. And that is the great thing. The ladders of success are open to all.
That is a myth and a fallacy, because you're not living in today's economy, and shame on you, sir.
Let me just say, I do not think it is a myth or a fallacy that the United States is a great place to live, raise your family, open your business, and succeed.
Representative Burgess, I'm Jim Moffitt in Louisville.
Long time no see.
Yeah, too long. I will try to give...
This man drove a vehicle that ran on hydrogen the other day, right?
Yes, I did. I mentioned that. Hopefully, to your relief, I will try to be brief. To that extent, I want to read my remarks. Most of the 92% is commentary. So if that wouldn't offend you, I'll start.
It's your time.
As you know, but may not remember, I've been a climate advocate for over 17 years. In 2003, your second town hall meeting, I asked you to support higher CAFE requirements to reduce emissions responsible for dangerous ozone levels in Denton County. You convinced me then that incentives are better than regulations. I learned something from you then. That was the start. The good news is that major corporations are now taking responsible leadership to meet the COP21 Paris Agreement goals, in spite of this administration's efforts to undermine the climate security of the United States. At your recent energy summit, I was extremely pleased to hear the speakers from the new Toyota headquarters in Plano. Their facility has net zero greenhouse gas emissions, and in a few years they will be net negative. As a bonus of attending, I got to drive a Toyota Mirai zero emissions hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. Unfortunately for us, they're only available in California for now. The sad news, in less than 3 weeks since your best ever energy summit, we have had a Vice President Pence dealing to sell toxic coal to Ukraine. This will further endanger the U.S. and the world with increased destruction and cost of global warming and climate change. We have also heard Secretary of Department Energy Perry incorrectly assert that global warming is the result of ocean and atmosphere heating up. Is that a joke? You know? Shameful that a person in such a responsible position doesn't understand that massive ocean heating is not a cause, but a result of excess CO2 in the atmosphere. This is not intended to be funny. It's like, apparently it will be up to Congress to enact meaningful legislation to protect us. Finally, I would like again to mention to you the important bipartisan House Climate Solutions Caucus. Membership requires joining in pairs, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat. The caucus has grown from 12 members to 50 since January. They are an active, responsible group that is seeking effective, economically feasible solutions to correct this growing threat. You have responded to my email. There are 4 requirements that should be included in any legislations that result. I believe there are acceptable answers to those requirements, and I would be happy to discuss and work with you. My ask is, will you find a Democratic member to join the Climate Solutions Caucus regarding this issue and work to create effective legislation to limit the global warming impact? Thank you. And will you?
I don't know the answer to your question. I have not looked at that caucus in depth. I promise you, I've got a lot going on every day. The last thing I need is another meeting, even if it's with a Democrat.
It's with 25 other Republicans and 25 Democrats.
Leave us your information. I'll look at it.
I will. Thank you.
I want to thank you again for holding so many town halls. This is my second one I've attended, and I appreciate the transparency. On 538, I was looking at how often our representatives vote with the president, and you have a rating of 97.6%, which is 1 vote that was different from the president's agenda. So my first part of the question is, can you name 1 policy position where you differ with Donald Trump? And the second part is, you voted for the AHCA, which was a bill that was supported by only 17% of Americans and opposed by dozens of healthcare and medical associations. So how much do you take public opinion into account when voting, and what would it take for you to put the majority of Americans over the party or the president?
Well, I don't do a lot of polling because it's expensive if you're going to do it accurately, but year over year, the popularity of the Affordable Care Act, or repealing the Affordable Care Act in this district that I represent, is 65 to 75%, and it has been consistent.
But you have to realize, though, that vote has consequences outside of the district too.
However, the 17% figure that you reference, and do recognize that there were plenty of people who were disappointed that the bill did not go far enough, that it left too much of the Affordable Care Act in place. And I can't disagree with that. We don't repeal the Independent Payment Advisory Board. We don't repeal the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation. We don't repeal the prohibition on physician-owned hospitals. There were plenty of parts of Obamacare that were not repealed in the House bill. We did what we could under the rules of reconciliation as the House understood them, and that was the reason the bill looked the way it did. But I promise you, I heard from plenty of people on the right that said, you're voting to keep Obamacare and I don't like it. So that was the conundrum that House Republicans found themselves in. The 17% figure is actually misleading. The popularity of the Affordable Care Act in this district has never been high.
But on the national level, the support for maintaining it is still the majority. And
Look,
at the time
even nationally, and to me, it's because of the individual mandate. This law has never been popular because it was coercive from the get-go. And that's not what this country is all about.
I think that belies an understanding of how insurance markets work, though. I mean, if you don't have people buying into the system collapses. Is that not true?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I said if you don't have healthy people buying into the system inherently would collapse then.
So how about this? How about insurance companies sell products that we want rather than we be forced to buy stuff we don't? That's what's called a market system, and it does work if we'll
It didn't work before the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Do you think that things before the Affordable Care Act were...
I'm sorry?
Do you believe that the system before the Affordable Care Act went into effect was working?
It had significant problems. I would have never believed they could all have been made worse with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and they were.
But did the bill you voted for not, the CBO score, did that not indicate that it would have made things even worse than they already are, if they're so bad?
Look, what the CBO told you was that if people were not forced to buy this crummy insurance, they wouldn't, because they're smarter than that. And I think the CBO might be right with that.
But then how would sick people in the high-risk pools maintain coverage?
Look, there are some things that can be done with risk pools, and I was grateful when Senator Hancock down in the Mid-Cities area put forward a risk pool bill in the state Senate, and it did pass, and now it has become law again. We lost our risk pools when Obamacare came down the pipe in 2013 and 2014. I'm glad those were reinstituted. There's no product available in those now, but it would be available, and some of the hybrid solutions with reinsurance and risk pools, I think, make a lot of sense. And the state should have the flexibility to do that.
I'm going to move on. Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening.
Before I get started here, I want to take a moment to applaud your conviction. You've been, over the course of your career, you've been very dedicated to government transparency. And for those who don't know, I understand this is your 100th town hall. So I have my disagreements with you and the current administration, but before I get started, I do want to say that I respect you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So, having said that, do you feel like a hero yet?
So let me just share something with you. On November 8th of 2016, I stood for re-election. I got the highest number of votes that anyone in the 26th district has ever received. Ever. Ever. Now, I also recognize that 95,000 people voted against me, and when you've got 95,000 people against you, that can be formidable. But 211,000 people said, we like what you're doing, keep at it.
Well, you know what? Fair enough. Other people need to use this microphone. We can get back to substantive policy issues now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Do you believe the numbers...
And close to
I'm sorry. Do you believe the number provided by the CBO on essentially all three plans that the GOP has put forward to replace Obamacare, where somewhere between 10 and 15 million people would lose their insurance or would somehow no longer be insured. Do you believe that number?
No.
Okay. What do you believe the number is?
Well, I think first off, when the CBO ran their first projections now this is not Texas because Texas did not expand Medicaid, but of those people who are in the Medicaid expansion populations, the CBO's own projection was that if there was not the individual mandate forcing them to take this free health care that was being given them, that they wouldn't take it. Now, I did find that counterintuitive. Someone is receiving for free a $6,500 a year benefit courtesy of the taxpayer, but it was the CBO's position that about 8 million folks would say no thanks, that they only did that because they were coerced. In the Affordable Care Act, the CBO's own projection was that 22 million people would be covered in the exchanges under the Affordable Care Act. The actual number is 1/2 of that. 1/2 of those people, 10 million, a little over 10 million, seek a waiver, or they simply pay the fine, or they don't show up and hope no one catches them.
My question
and,
didn't have...
And the CBO then turns around and says 20 million people have insurance in the exchanges under the Affordable Care Act.
My question...
But in fact, they don't. 10 million of those people are in fact not covered.
Yeah, but sir,
at their own volition, which actually should have some place in a free society.
My question had nothing to do with what has happened in the past in Obamacare. My question had to do with the CBO numbers.
Well, it's relevant because the CBO projection is based off their prior projections and their baselines that were established after the passage of the Affordable Care Act.
Do you
they
believe...
said 22 million people would be covered under... 22 million people would be covered.
Let me rephrase my question. Do you believe a sizable number of people will no longer be covered?
No, I think there'll be new opportunities for people to gain coverage.
So you think they will take that? You don't believe that people will lose or be uncovered for whatever reason? Not enough money, they can't afford it?
That happens today.
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking you, what do you think will happen in the future? Because what you are doing, with what you guys are doing, is betting the farm of the guy sitting here. That's important. So what are you doing? And then the next question after that would be, if they lose insurance, as the CBO thinks, does a person with insurance, is he generally healthier than a person without?
Well, actually, the state of Oregon did an interesting study accidentally on that issue several years ago. Turns out to not be the case, but nevertheless, I want people to be covered. Why wouldn't I want people to be covered?
I'm sure you would. The question was, if they are not, are they healthier or less healthy?
Well, I disagree with your premise that they would not be covered.
No, I'm asking if they are. If they happen to not be, and there are millions out there that are not, so are they healthier or aren't they? The question is the people who are covered or are not. Nothing else, just those two, just that. If you're covered as a group, or if you're uncovered as a group, are you healthier?
Coverage doesn't equal care. Well, I spoke to a guy at a used car lot yesterday, or the day before, and he said, I hope you do something about this. My brother simply pays the fine because he can't afford the insurance that he's forced to buy. He has coverage, but he gets no care. The person who has a $6,800 deductible and goes to the emergency room with a kidney stone tonight, they're going to get a $4,500 bill. None of that is covered. Yeah.
And I'm going to move on because they need to talk. I think you answered my question by essentially not clearly answering my question, but thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Rochelle Webb, and I want to thank you for coming out and hearing from your constituents today. I have two comments and maybe a question. As a small business owner, I'm concerned about women business owners' access to capital. Also, in the new tax reforms, that we as individuals and small single-member LLCs will get the same tax pass-through credit as large corporations. In the audience, you have several people who
I think
own
that ought to be
small
the goal.
business.
I think that ought to be the goal.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you advocating on our behalf to make sure that we're included when the corporations get their share is very important. The second part is just a comment about bipartisan. We need to have an atmosphere of civility that we can hear from all of our neighbors and still disagree politely without yelling, state our positions. And I'm glad that you're here to hear some opposing positions. As I told someone in the line, I actually wrote your office. You wrote me back. It wasn't a form letter, and you really explained your position on health care. I'm glad that you took the time to hear an opposing view. I'm not going to restate it, but please take into consideration all of those who couldn't make it in the line, that even though we disagree, we're still neighbors, and we still want to see our representatives working together. Thank you.
So our friends in the press are here, and as you know, the press like to cover conflict. They don't like to cover when things work. So you probably didn't hear or don't know, so I'll be the first to tell you that the United States Senate adjourned today, so we wish them well on the time that they're taking off. Right before they did, they passed a bill that the House had passed 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was a bill to reauthorize the Food and Drug Administration to bring $1 billion in private sector money in to the agency to help them do their work. Someone asked me if I ever disagreed with President Trump. President Trump had said, I want all of the money coming into the FDA to be private, but actually it is better if some of those dollars are public appropriated dollars. Our committee did the work and made certain that that was the bill that was delivered to the Senate, and the Senate finally today saw their way to pass. They just took up and passed our bill. They didn't amend it, they didn't change it. So now it's gone down to the White House for signature. There's a major piece of bipartisan health care legislation, but your friends in the press weren't covering it, so you don't know. I'm sorry, proceed. My commercial's over.
It's fine.
We all heart the Food and Drug Administration until we don't.
My name is David, and I'm just going to simply say that I come from a middle class family. My father did not. He came from a low class family. He worked himself up. My son will most likely be a middle class family, and if not lower, because of the shrinking deterioration of our middle class. I am asking the question of when are
Wait a minute. Are you aware that household income for the past 2 quarters has posted some of its best numbers? Are you aware that consumer confidence,
You're speaking to a teacher,
it
sir.
is at a 17-year high?
I'm sorry, I will respond again so you can hear me. You're speaking to a teacher.
The middle class
You're
has
speaking
been-
to a teacher who, after 13 years of service, only received $50,000, sir. After 13 years of service. If you would like to talk to me more privately about this, I'll give you my number. And let's have lunch. I'll even buy. Okay, so let me go back to it. So when can we see...
I do want you to know that my son, I don't know your age, he's probably similar in age that you are, is also a middle school teacher, has done so for years since he got out of the Air Force. He loves it. He wouldn't do anything else.
Me either.
And
I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to see that kids get a fair shot, and plus, I will tell you, my high school kids, they get their fair shot. They come on Facebook, they come talk to me, and they still even send me messages every once in a while saying, hey, what can I do in this interview? Okay. I throw them a response. I'm not in it for the money, man. Okay, so this is my question to you. When can we start seeing that the corporations that get subsidies, that send their money into offshore accounts, start getting penalized, that start sending jobs overseas, start getting penalized? When can we start seeing that corporations that are not paying their share start paying their share? Because I'm paying a lot of my share. And I'm not going to complain about which party, this party, et cetera, because truth be told, I don't really vote by party. I vote for what I believe is best for my family. what is best for my neighbor. And can I just say this real quick to everybody out here? When we talking about the aisle, why is there an aisle? Can we get a table and sit down and eat? Can we get a table and sit down and talk? So, that being said, sir, I will go ahead and just ask the question of when can we start seeing that certain companies, because, okay, here's a stupid idea. I mean, it's crazy, but it's stupid, but just hear me out on this. Let's say Walmart gets all these subsidies, right? Walmart has all these huge parking lots, I'm assuming you've noticed. What if we had Walmart, out of their subsidies, pay for solar panels that go all the way across those particular parking lots, and then the electricity gathered from those panels can go straight to a local school district to fund their electricity? I'm a crazy out-of-the-box thinker, I will tell you that, but hey, can the government do that? No, they can't, because it's invasion of this, invasion of that, all that other stuff. But if they're getting money from us...
Are you aware there's Walmart in McKinney that is off the grid entirely and runs off solar and wind power?
Okay, great. Start sending the energy to us. Start sending the energy to the school. I'm cool with that. Okay, but when is the middle class, and I'm talking about tax relief, I'm talking about less money being paid from the middle class into the system. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
How you doing? Hi. I wanted to thank you also for being here, and
Sure.
Although we don't share the same philosophy, I'd like to thank your staff for...
Yeah, I do have a good staff. Thank you for pointing that out.
For being, answering my emails, being so polite whenever I called on the phone. I represent a group called StudentLoanJustice.org. There's 44 million students that have $1.5 trillion in loans. Looking at the future, these borrowers are already burdened with debt, making it difficult to contribute to the economy. As an example, buying a home, a car, even getting married. The student loans are the only loans in the nation to be stripped of bankruptcy protection and statutes of limitation. We have had 5 documented suicides. The government profits $50 billion per year. And the Department of
I do think, if I just may
Education-
interject here, I do think it is possible for a bankruptcy discharge on student loans, but it is more difficult. You're correct.
Yeah. You're right. I'm also talking about private student loans, which are impossible. There's no issue there. But the government profits $50+ billion a year, and this is very dear to me here. The Department of Education fights hard to keep bankruptcy gone. The government even makes a profit on default loans. There's a bill on the floor. H.R. 2366 will force the government to play by the same rules as every other lender and will bring down the price of going to college. Please join Mark Vesey, who represents the 33rd District of Texas, Dallas, and Tarrant counties, as a co-sponsor of H.R. 2366.
Will you give that information to Eric?
I will.
And we'll look at it.
A bipartisan bill. Thank you.
I said we'll look at it. I didn't say we'll do it. Actually, in the previous apportionment of the 26th district, I had many of the neighborhoods that Mark Vesey now represents. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Dr. Burgess. My name is Rick Weldon. I live at 520 Robert Street. You might be familiar with it.
What a deal.
Yeah, Sonia says hi.
So I drove by there last fall just to see what the old neighborhood looked like. And you guys had a lot of Hillary Clinton signs up on the street.
Yes, sir, we did. Yes. So, I'm a small business owner. Healthcare has gone up.
Tell me your name again. I know you told me as we started.
Yeah, Rick Weldon.
Britt?
Weldon, W-H-E-L-D-O-N.
Okay.
Thank you. Healthcare has gone up in my company. Every year we've paid 8, 10, 15, 20% more for healthcare. And as you know, inflation's 3%. Okay, what we do, just like any other small business owner, is we do the best we can and end up giving less benefits, cutting costs. We held on to the insurance, but the deductibles. I had people that couldn't afford to use their insurance,
Sure.
and they were well paid for the industry. So all of the noise has been about Obamacare and H, whatever, CA. That's not the problem. The problem is the health costs in this country. And you're on the health committee, and quite frankly, I see that as your primary responsibility to find some way to get our costs in line. Now, have you read Elizabeth Rosenthal's book, An American? It was about the healthcare delivery system. She talks about healthcare, hospital conglomerates. She talks about the drug companies and the tricks they pull. She talks about insurance companies and the tricks they pull. As you know, Medicare costs 2% to administer, and the insurance companies get...
Actually, that's because the federal government picks up all the cost. I promise you, the cost of maintenance of the Hubert H. Humphrey building down the street is substantial, but that's actually picked up by the General Service Administration, not carried on the books by HHS. So it's a little bit, if they were a standalone insurance company, they would have to pay the light bill, the heating bill, the rent, the taxes.
That's fair. Can you say that the insurance companies are cheaper than the Medicare costs?
Well, I don't think they're not comparable because they obviously are different business models.
Sure.
One is a government-run program, and one is in the private markets. I think there is room for both, and I would tell you that the people that are covered under Medicare who've paid into it all their lives, certainly there should be the expectation that will continue for them. The people who want to be covered under private insurance should have that right also.
Pick up Dr. Rosenthal. She's an MD, went through her residency and became a reporter. And she has done a good job of summarizing what's wrong with our healthcare system. And I think you could do something about it. For example, the drug companies. We know what the drug rates happen.
Okay, I would just take that is not a problem that's going to be solved overnight. I know Bernie Sanders says it can be. I disagree with him on that. But if for people who were watching last December, President Obama signed a bill called the Cures for the 21st Century. We did significant movement on getting the time involved in development of drug and devices down, and then the Food and Drug Administration reauthorization bill that passed just today was to complete that process. So that is positive movement in that regard. I think you should be grateful for that. Now
we need a lot more.
You do, and this is, and one of the things we're going to be doing in the subcommittee is we're going to have a supply chain hearing on and talking about some of the things that impact the costs. We had a big hearing on the 340B program. Hospitals like Parkland Hospital that get significant discounts because their population is less able to afford the products, but then there are other institutions who seem to be abusing the ability to run the 340B program, and then the net result is it drives the cost up for you and me. I will say this, if someone doesn't understand the difference between Sovaldi and Daraprim, we're probably going to come up with the wrong answer. Daraprim was a product that an individual discovered had only one, it was a generic, but there was only one on the market. Nobody else made it. So he exploited the supply chain. The FDA was slow to approve other product, and as a consequence, he exploited a weakness in the market that really should not exist. Sovaldi is a drug to cure, not treat, but cure hepatitis C. Hepatitis C is a disease that was not even known when I was a resident at Parkland Hospital back in the 1970s. We actually called it non-A, non-B hepatitis. And some brilliant person said, well, that's hepatitis C. Obviously, why didn't anybody think of that before? So it's gone from mid-1970s, when I was a resident at Parkland Hospital, to a couple of years ago, from a disease that didn't even have a name to a disease that has a cure. A cure. I mean, that's a gift from God that that disease has a cure. You don't want to interfere with the innovation and the breakthrough drugs that are, there are things that are literally right on the precipice of becoming available.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Carter went public with July of 2015 that he had liver and brain metastasis from a melanoma. Yeah. When I was in medical school, if somebody came up with that diagnosis in July, they ain't going to be around in Halloween. Jimmy Carter, a year later, gave a speech at the Democratic Convention. A speech, he had a brain metastasis from melanoma. That's incredible that the immunotherapy that has been developed is available to him. Yeah, it's expensive, but thank God it's there. And I'm sorry, it wasn't developed in another country. It was developed in the United States of America. And there is some reason for that. The innovation that occurs in this country really is not paralleled anywhere else in the world. And we do need to be careful with that. That is a resource. That is a legacy that we will leave. And we do need to be careful with that.
Well, the reporter, Rosenthal, the book was called American Sickness, and she will...
Okay, I'm going to make your day. Someone put a copy of that on my desk.
Good.
I haven't looked at it, but someone put a copy on my desk the other day.
Good. Thank you.
So how do you like the house?
Sure, you're not funny. Dr. Burgess, thank you so much for coming tonight. I have a couple of questions. To me, what I've read, what I've seen, the education system all over the country is a mess, especially with Common Core. Is there anything in the works to deal with that?
Well, on the state, education, of course, is a state issue, and the state has taken a pretty firm position on the issue of Common Core. The concern that people have is that in spite of the fact that it's not the standard curriculum, it has found, parts of it have found their way in spite of Lieutenant Governor Patrick's prohibition on Common Core in this state. Look, I got to trust my state counterparts on this. They're the ones who are in charge of running our public education system in Texas, which is as it should be.
Well, my concern is that our kids are not globally competitive in a lot of cases. So that's what I'm hoping something will be addressed. And the other
That's why we need good teachers, like this gentleman and my son. We're grateful for their service.
Yeah. They can only deal with the materials they have, though.
So most of us do pay a significant amount of property taxes in this area, and they've gone up a lot in the last 10 years, and that is for education in this area. We value education, and that's not true, not true. Proceed.
Okay, the other question I have, I read actually today that we have people from the Democratic side that are coming to Texas to try and rearrange our voting districts.
There are court cases challenging the reapportionment. Remember, I told the other gentleman that I used to represent a lot of the neighborhoods that Mark Vesey represents now. 26th Congressional District, look at it on the map. It is a very tight district. Much more compact than it was under the previous apportionment. For whatever reason, though, there are people who file lawsuits and say that the Texas maps need to be redrawn. I don't know if that will happen or not. North Carolina had a big case that I believe was just settled in their favor. They kept the congressional lines that they had, but they're redrawn every 10 years. And under our Constitution, under our laws, they're drawn by the state legislature. That is their prerogative unless they give it over to some other group or body. Texas has not. California has. But Texas will, their state legislature, will draw the new districts after the 2020 census. If you and I are still around, we'll get to see what those lines look like.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sir, we're down to the last question, if my timing is right. So.
Pick up a little bit more there, please. Yeah. Hello, Congressman. We've met before at the Hula Hut. I first have a comment for all those who believe. Hula Hut.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Last spring. I have a comment for all those who believe that the United States military exists as a social experiment rather than to protect our nation and win wars. Strap on an 80-pound pack, carry 500 rounds of ammo and 2 weapons, and live out in the field for 3 weeks without a shower and toilet facilities, and then tell me how you feel.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Two easy questions. What is your position, and what's the status of the National Reciprocity Act, which will allow Texas license to carry holders to carry in 50 states?
That is a bill that I have co-sponsored. It's in the House. Not sure what the activity on it has been recently, but yes, it is.
Thank you for
as you're familiar, there was a very unfortunate incident at a baseball practice,
Yep.
and that was one of the things that came up as a consequence.
Add in Representative Kerry.
I'm sorry?
Add in Representative Kerry.
Yes.
My second question, do you support and what's the status of the Act?
The Hearing Protection Act to deal with the ability to suppress noise from the discharge.
Right.
You know, I can't tell you where that is right now. I know I've heard that discussed. I think it's in process, but I can't tell you where it is.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you, and thanks for your service.
That one was quick. I think we've still got time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
This is in regard to your membership on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and you're the chair, I think, of the Health Subcommittee.
Correct.
Have you had
Last term, I was the chair of the committee that did self-driving cars. So.
Okay. Well, have you
and that was fun
had
too.
any bills before your committee to make it okay for Medicare Part D to actually negotiate drug prices?
That is one of the things that I expect will come up in that supply chain
Have you had
hearing.
them before? I'm sure people
Yeah,
have
it has come
offered
up
them.
a
How
number-
did you, what was your position? How did you vote on
I don't think
those?
it helps.
Because, why do you think it doesn't help?
Well, that's, okay, here, actually, I'll defend the Congressional Budget Office. And when Doug Elmendorf, who is a budget director for the Congressional Budget Office, when the Democrats were in the majority, and of course the Affordable Care Act was coming down the pipe, a lot of people felt that, hey, if we just get the ability for Secretary Sebelius to set drug prices, it's going to spin off lots of dollars that we'll get to spend in other places. Doug Elmendorf came and testified to our committee, as he did over in the Senate Finance Committee around the same time in the fall of 2009, that that would not move the needle, that would not affect drug prices, but what it is lead to shortages. And I think those of us who are old enough to remember the gasoline lines when Jimmy Carter set the price of gas, you can end up with spot shortages if you control prices.
Yeah, there's lots of reasons why there's shortages. Not enough competition, not enough companies, they run out of product, you know. Anyway. So you said that you didn't think it would, and you thought the CBO agreed with you. But let me see if I can find this. So there was a study by the Inspector General of Health and Human Services that was released in April of 2015, which examined the government spending and rebates on 200 brand name drugs. And they were looking at what Medicaid paid for them and what Medicare Part D paid for them. Now, Medicaid apparently can negotiate prices.
No,
They
not
paid
not
less
exactly.
than half of what Medicare Part D paid for 110 of those drugs. Part D paid less than Medicaid for only 5 of those 200 drugs. Also, the Veterans Administration, they pay less for drugs than
VA
Medicare.
runs on a formulary, which is a different situation.
A lot of people run on formularies. I'm a nurse. Every hospital I worked at had a formulary. Every insurance company I've had, they have had a formulary. Medicare could have a formulary.
Well, they don't.
Well, then you brought it up. Well, anyway, I don't know how to respond
I hated
to
formularies when I was in practice.
that. I'm sorry you hated them, but they worked. And if there was a reason why a patient really needed a drug that wasn't on the formulary, there was a way for them to get that.
Okay, so what's the disagreement?
What disagreement?
What is it you're asking?
Why you think having Medicare negotiate drug prices would not save money?
Well, look, who has the ability to, in a big way, to move markets, and that's the pharmacy benefit managers of the big companies. And that is one of the things that we will be looking at in the supply chain hearing, because those benefits brought by having that much market clout don't always seem to find their way to the patient. They find their way to the insurance company, they find their way to the pharmaceutical company, but not to the patient. So we are going to be looking at that.
Yeah, that's another question. Why, when there are savings, rebates and savings in government-run healthcare, things like VA or Medicaid, no one's really looking to see that are they then the government receiving those dollars instead of some middleman along the way.
Well, that was the whole beef with the 340B program. That's why we had the hearing.
Yeah.
The Department of Health and Human Services, HRSA, is supposed to oversee that. Turns out they don't. They wouldn't know if someone who bought a drug at a lower price on that program was the person who was supposed to be eligible for that or not, and what happened to those dollars that spun off as a result of that transaction. They have no earthly idea. That's not right, and that's one of the things we need to fix.
Okay, so let me finish then. So if a bill came up...
But I do have to say, with Parkland Hospital in my backyard, they are very concerned if we were to do anything to disrupt the 340B program. It is something that is extremely important as far as Parkland, when they look at their overall budget.
Course,
yes, they do make money off the 340B program, and that's one of the things they don't want to see go away. But there are other places where, unfortunately, it may be being abused.
Okay, so if a bill came before your committee to let Medicare Part D negotiate drugs, you would vote no?
Well, it did come before our committee.
And you voted?
Well, the sponsor of the bill withdrew it before we voted.
And if it comes again, you will vote?
No.
No.
33.
Well, this lady's waited so patiently.
Okay.
But let's make it just one question, not four, okay?
I'm the only black here.
You want to yield to the gentleman?
Can I real quickly remind you of a conversation that we had at a previous town hall? It was about the Hobby Lobby decision, and you said to me that women could go somewhere else to get a job, and I should have said, yes, and blacks can go to another lunch counter. I need you to get on the right side of history on women's health care, and like my friend Amber, I am the parent of a member of the queer community. I have a gay son. I expect you as a mother to get on the right side of history.
There we have it. That'll be, yes, okay, come shout it out.
Thank you, Dr. Congressman Michael Burgess.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jerome Reiser, and that's my wife back there, LaDonya Reiser. And
LaDonya.
And I got a letter back from you a couple of years ago about a medical concern that I had. And you wrote me the letter telling me what to do, what agencies to contact. And I did all that. I went through the State of Texas Medical Health Board, the Nursing Board, the Paramedics Board, the Doctors Board. I didn't get any response back from the State of Texas, from Governor Abbott's executive offices. I also went through the federal agencies with the Federal Bureau of Investigation with a public corruption civil rights violation. I didn't get any information back from those agencies. So now, me and my family I was subterfuged into a hospital a few years ago. Subterfuge, tricked.
Okay.
And surgical procedure was performed without my knowledge, and that's why I came to your office. I called your office several times after I got your letter requesting a meeting with you, to maybe you can manufacture a meeting with the medical health director in the state of Texas or someone in the federal government. I was not able to get a meeting on your agenda with you after making 4 or 5 different attempts. So I guess my question to you is now, is it possible for me and my family to meet with you on a person-to-person basis, because the information I have is too large for me to discuss everything at this present time?
Did we initiate a congressional inquiry on your behalf?
No, you did not.
Okay, well, we do that all the time. So the answer to your question is yes.
Yes, what?
Yes. Yes, we'll meet with you.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks a lot.
And I can't guarantee you the result, but we ask questions of federal agencies all the time.
Okay, thank you.
So really that has pushed us to the bottom of the hour, and in deference to the people who are going to be starting school here in a few days' time, I want to give them plenty of opportunity to do what they need to do this evening. I need to once again thank the Little Elm Police Department. We need to let them go home to their families. But thank you all for being here. The participatory democracy is what it's all about. Thanks for being here tonight. If you didn't get enough, we'll do it again Saturday morning in the Colony at 9 a.m.